In a depressingly inevitable development, the WWE return of the Mac very much became a reality at the turn of the year. So with that in mind, it's probably as good or bad a time as any to dive into the absolute worst things the on-screen villain and real-life egomaniac has ever done to his cerebral assassin son-in-law. Gareth here from What Culture Wrestling, and here are the 10 worst things Vince McMahon has ever done to Triple H. Number 10. Firing him on screen for John Laurinaitis. It's first time to relive that bizarre period of WWE programming that saw the game stepping in as COO after relieving Vince of his on-screen duties. What followed that initial booting of the pink-suited Mr. McMahon character in the wake of the controversial ending to 2011's Money in the Bank pay-per-view was a pretty turbulent time for both the audience and Trips himself. On top of having to deal with a pissed-off CM Punk and old pal Kevin Nash being an all-round nuisance, The Miz and R-Truth causing chaos every single week soon led to the rest of the on-screen personalities giving the struggling new boss a vote of no confidence. And in what likely sits as just about the most embarrassing thing any on-screen character, or real-life figure for that matter, can experience in their professional life, the King of Kings eventually found himself being relieved by his father-in-law later down the road and replaced by none other than Johnny Bloody Ace. Here's hoping kayfabe history doesn't repeat itself in reality in the coming months. And the same John Laurinaitis who was let go after being implicated in the recent McMahon hush money scandal doesn't find a way to wriggle back into the WWE system too. Number 9. Getting rid of his black and gold darlings. 2021 likely sits as a year the game won't be in a rush to relive anytime soon for a whole host of reasons. But one element was the sight of many of his precious NXT darlings being unceremoniously let go at various points in the year. Despite Paul Levesque putting hours of his time into protecting and building the likes of Karrion Kross, Keith Lee, Aleister Black, Ember Moon, Hit Row, and so many other talented developmental performers over the years, Vince simply didn't hesitate to release a frankly ridiculous amount of former black and gold stars onto the free agency market, and it continued into 2022 as well, with a sidelined Levesque being forced to sit and watch as the likes of William Regal and Samoa Joe were let go last January too. Admittedly, it didn't come as too much of a surprise to see Papa H bring back many of those fired personalities the second he returned to power last year. But are any of those returning NXT alumni really safe now that their old erratic boss is back in town? Number 8. Quietly demoting him before throwing him into Performance Center TV. There is no getting away from the fact that Triple H was thrown into a deeply undesirable position back on March 13th's edition of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox. On the back of reportedly being quietly demoted behind the scenes, the game found himself front and center on the first ever Performance Center crowdless episode of The Blue Show as the pandemic gripped the planet. And the game would even seemingly make a sly dig at his demotion at the hands of his father-in-law, noting how he was the only person who can get demoted and get busier. Levesque at least attempted to make the best of an unquestionably uncomfortable situation, hijacking a camera and hyping the piss out of Michael Cole. But having to throw in a smile and help steer WWE through the unprecedented pandemic waters must have felt like a real slap in the face after being taken down a peg by his in-law boss. Number 7. Killing the black and gold era. That aforementioned quiet demotion seemed to act as the first crack in the once solid assumption that the game would one day be the person to take over from Vince McMahon, with September 2021 also seeing Trips suddenly being forced to step away from NXT due to a life-threatening cardiac event. His absence brought with it the killing of the developmental brand Papa H had dedicated himself to forging, and the birth of all things 2.0. The sacking of many of his backstage allies sent a loud and clear message that Vince McMahon wasn't at all interested in handing the keys to the kingdom over to his sidelined son-in-law anymore. Again, Triple H ultimately set about undoing many of those demoralizing developments after unexpectedly making a comeback as the new head of creative post Vince exit in disgrace. But you still wouldn't put it past the returning chairman to overrule the death of 2.0 and rehiring of the game's mates out of sheer spite at some point down the road, would you? Number 6. Wanting to be revealed as his wife's kid's real father on screen. In a career littered with simply baffling and often highly offensive ideas, arguably the most disturbing involved Vince's son-in-law and his daughter Stephanie. Oh, and his unborn grandchild. McMahon reportedly had an idea that would have involved the game and his wife's baby being revealed to actually be Vince's. All-out incest for your entertainment, folks. And when Steph understandably told her dad no for only the second time in her life when it came to his balmy pitches, how did Vince respond? By pitching Shane to replace him as the on-screen father instead. Much better. You can only imagine what must have been going through his son-in-law's mind upon hearing of this absolutely outrageous suggestion. It probably didn't shock him in the slightest, let's be honest. Number 5. Ordering him to get Ric Flair off the stage during his Hall of Fame speech. After spending a lifetime putting their bodies on the line for fans' enjoyment, getting to stand on stage and reminisce about the good old days is an honor many cherish as much as lifting a world championship in front of a capacity crowd. So having to cut off an inductee midway through their Hall of Fame speech isn't exactly a job many people would would be in a rush to sign up for. But when your paps-in-law runs the show, sometimes you have no choice but to get your hands dirty, even if said WWE Hall of Fame speech is being delivered by a longtime mentor and wrestling legend like Ric Flair. As Trips himself would recall on an episode of WWE 24, Vince was responsible for the worst moment ever, as he demanded the game to tell the Nature Boy to wrap up his never-ending speech before the show was dropped dead off TV. Despite this first request from Triple H, however, Flair continued, because of course he did, before Levesque was once again forced to nudge his pal into bringing his Hall of Fame moment to an end. Number 4, that 25th anniversary celebration. What's more embarrassing than having that same mad boss rock up to your 25th anniversary celebration and tell some of the most cringe-inducing stories imaginable? And this nightmare just so happened to play out to the sound of deeply uncomfortable silence too, thanks to the fact that the game's hitting of the magic 25-year milestone with WWE landed slap bang in the middle of a global pandemic. Find yourself not being able to go an hour without sinking into painful depression due to the harrowing realities waiting outside your door? No matter, here's a story about when Papa H once simulated shagging a corpse inside of a coffin. Enjoy! Rambling through zingers like claiming if there were folks in attendance they'd be chanting boring, before oddly referencing the gobbledygooker, Triple H's part in said disturbing Katie Vick segment, and even hinting at the 25-year man being responsible for producing the god-awful Bailey's This Is Your Life segment in 2017. When it comes to tributes, this one was as rotten as it gets. Number 3, making him do the chaperone. Some of the brilliant Dave Bautista's very first steps in the world of acting very nearly saw him leading what would ultimately become a CM Punk punchline. Thankfully, Big Dave had the sense to back out of the WWE Studios project late in the day, but this last-minute exit ultimately meant that Vince McMahon's incoming The Chaperone picture was without a well-known star to bring some much-needed attention to the no-doubt smash hit. Sure enough, a desperate Papa V quickly turned up at Levesque's house, and the game wound up being told that he needed to be on set tomorrow to fill in for his former Evolution teammate. In fact, Trips didn't even have time to read the script for the eventual straight-to-DVD comedy flick, and when he asked his flapping in-law whether it was even any good, a not exactly surprising response of, "I don't know, I haven't read it," was fired right back at him. Simply put, any hopes Trips had of following in The Rock's Hollywood footsteps weren't exactly aided by his enforced casting in this particularly embarrassing project. Number 2, burying many an NXT call-up. Papa H put much of his heart and soul into establishing his NXT as the place to be for independent sensations who deserved a global platform and the main roster stars of tomorrow, and for the most part he largely succeeded in the former. Yet when it came to the second part of that statement, the vast majority of those kissing goodbye to all things NXT were inevitably shuffled into the mid-card before regularly getting utterly humiliated as part of a main roster landscape that was so crushingly broken. And a quick glance at the way the likes of Gunter and Solo Sikoa are currently being brilliantly handled on SmackDown and Raw sadly tells a story of what could have been for those who were ultimately damaged beyond repair by a billionaire who was anything but NXT. Number 1, returning before the new regime has even properly got going. Rumblings of the disgraced former chairman of the board plotting a return to WWE after being implicated in a misconduct scandal soon turned into an uncomfortable reality in January. Now, on the back of it being reported that just about everyone working under the guidance of Triple H, Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan in the wake of Vince's exit were very much happy with the way the company was being ran, that once rebuilt morale appears to be heading down the toilet once again. McMahon's return to the company has already had a potentially game-changing impact on WWE, with Stephanie McMahon soon opting to resign as co-CEO, a number of board members exiting, including the person who led the internal investigation into the allegations against Vince, and the promotion now seemingly being on the verge of finally being sold. And despite the figure who holds the majority voting power in WWE initially claiming that he was only back with the company to help with the potential selling of WWE, after refusing to support a sale of any new media rights deals if he wasn't reinstated as executive chairman, his growing presence within the company and news of Vince already reportedly suggesting changes soon led to a few calm-down meetings led by the game. Trips is still firmly in control of creative at this moment in time, as he put it to his Raw and SmackDown stars. But even with that being the case right now, it's hard to escape the feeling that Papa H's days in Gorilla could be very much numbered as an already insane 2023 unfolds. And that's our list. Know of any other terrible things Vince McMahon has done to Triple H? Then let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you like this kind of thing, then head on over to whatculture.com and find some more brilliant articles just like the one this video you're watching right this second is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for watching this lovely video today. Hopefully I'll see your faces very, very soon, but in the meantime, hey, be good to yourself. Bye bye.